issue of human rights. Since 1984, we know that there have been thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of deaths in the Sikh community, but it's not been brought to the wider world. I think that needs to be addressed.
Ranjit Singh, I'll come to you on that. It's a great point. I mean, human rights go into, Afghanistan, into Kosovo. Why are they not allowed into? Are they allowed into Punjab, or have they been allowed into Punjab to look into the torture of Sikh prisoners and things like that?
The cover-up of the genocide against the Sikhs has been a scandal. I mean, perhaps we can address a separate point about whether we ourselves are educating the wider world, international community, and maybe even our own youngsters. But I mean, the fundamental point here is that the Indian government has done a huge exercise in covering up what they've done. Let's just, everybody, concentrate on what we're talking about here. From 1984 onwards, we've seen large-scale military attack, as in on the Darbar Sahib and 38 of the Gurdwaras around Punjab. We saw an Operation Woodrose where immediately after that the military combed the countryside of Punjab looking for young Sikhs and eliminating them. We saw the massacre of Sikh in November 1984 following Indira Gandhi's killing. Some 10,000 in Delhi alone, maybe 20,000 across India were butchered. Subsequent to that, we've had this dirty war fought against Sikhs in Punjab. Extrajudicial killings, disappearances. This has all been documented. This is not just coming from me. Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, locally based human rights organisations have documented all of this. Secret cremations, in their thousands, bodies of young Sikhs who were killed by the security forces. Security forces who were given promotions and financial incentives, literally bonuses, for killing young Sikhs during that traumatic
sorry
period.
not to disturb you, while I was doing the research last night, if you YouTube something, they were actually saying that, I think it's a report by an Australian journalist, that people go missing and the police were Shariam asking for people, we need 150 lakh or something to let them go. I mean, why does that happen?
Well,
what causes that?
Because it's state policy. You cannot have security forces conducting this kind of genocide without the state directing them to do it. And we don't have to take my word for this. KPS Gill, who was one of the most notorious police chiefs in Punjab during the militancy...
A Sikh, a Sardar.
Yeah, during the militancy period. He's gone on record. He's spoken to journalists saying, we adopted extra-constitutional methods to finish off the movement physically. That was their attempt, and that's how they poured in money and resources. So they're not even apologetic about what they did, and they're not even denying it. But what I think we're coming to here, it's a very important human rights issue which Baisab raised, is that it's time for the international community to step in. It's been 25 years since this essentially came up in terms of genocide. We've had human rights abuses before then. 1978 was mentioned when 13 Singhs were killed, massacred. But after that there were also extrajudicial killings by the police forces, which Sant Pindranwale often responded to. Now, my point is, the Indian state has, in a concerted manner, granted impunity to all of the security forces and politicians who carried out or directed the genocide. Amnesty and Human Rights Watch have complained repeatedly to the United Nations, in fact. I attended the Indian Universal Periodic Review in Geneva last year, where the UN Human Rights Council considered India's position vis-à-vis human rights. And the submissions made to that hearing by the likes of Human Rights Watch were that we are talking about a deliberate cover-up, deliberate impunity for all those who are guilty. Now the question for us today, and I just attended a meeting in Parliament this week here at Westminster in the UK to address this very point, which is that it's now time for the international community to address this, because redress will not be given by the Indian judicial system.
I was going to say, what is the Indian response? I mean, obviously, to these Amnesty International, these reports that go to, what kind of response do you get from them?
Well, India...
Or don't they respond?
Largely they don't respond.
Right.
You have ludicrous situation, for example, where the United Nations Special Rapporteur on torture and on extrajudicial killings. So this is a UN functionary charged with investigating allegations of torture or extrajudicial killings. These are formal bodies set up by the UN, and their special rapporteur, their representative, is not actually allowed to visit Punjab.
Why don't these people come out and speak openly then and say we're not allowed to go into Punjab? Why isn't the media picking this up?
Well,
I mean, I ask you because you're involved in this, and you've done a paper for the House of Commons, so you're extremely heavily involved in this. Why are you going to the media and speaking about it?
It's a kind of sign of the times. You know, where countries have self-interest, then those governments and the media that effectively works for those governments will take up issues. And the Sikhs of Punjab have not been in any other country's national interest to take up, as it were. They haven't had a geopolitical reason or strategic reason to get involved.
Yeah.
Now, I say that in the past tense. I think it might change in the future. South Asia is becoming a real mess. We talk about Afghanistan, we're talking about what's happening in Pakistan, we're talking about the Indo-Pak situation, we're talking about nuclearization. China also has big grievances with India along the border. So I think the strategic thinking of people, of the international community, may well change yet. Yeah. But historically, we haven't had the kind of attention we deserve. Okay. Simply because it's not been in their so-called national interest to take up these issues.
I mean, you know, when we talk about Operation Blue Star, we talk about the Harmandir Sahib, the attack on Darbar Sahib, but obviously once Indira Gandhi was assassinated by her own bodyguards, what happened in Delhi must be one of the Holocaust of the times. I mean, how do you feel about that? And, you know, children, what I read is children burnt with rubber ties around their necks, women dragged to the streets and battered and naked. And I mean, as a Sikh, as a human, forget as a Sikh, as a human, what do you think of that when you hear stories like that?
Well, you said that after the attack on Sri Darbar Sahib, but I think just to add to that, it wasn't just Sri Darbar Sahib which was attacked. 40 other Gurdwaras simultaneously were attacked, again, which brings to mind that it was nothing to do with Sant Janai Singh Bhindranwala. Even Takht Keskar Sahib, 50 Sikhs were lined up and killed. Takht Dandama Sahib, which I stayed there to do Santhya, the Granthi Singh was saying that all the Granthi Singhs, all the Gyanijis were lined up in a line and they were all shot point blank. And even the Guru Granth Sahib, this group, they were all they were their guns. They picked up all the Ramallah because they said there might be terrorists hiding underneath Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj. So this is what was happening. Coming back to what Baji said about the Delhi. A few years back, I think I might have been a Monna then, this is about 5-6 years ago, I read a book by Gurbachan Singh Babbar, Sarkari Qatl-e-Aam. It used to be a website called burningpunjab.com. The person who made that, he's died, so the website's not operational anymore. However, in this book, it's a harrowing tale of first-hand experiences of people who experienced the brutality of these mobs. And it was apparent from all the eyewitnesses that the politicians, the Indian government at that time, they provided lists of names of Indian households in Delhi